when you talk to people at the local church level, they don't often use the word mistrust or trust in the conversation. But then as you talk to them and you hear them talk, you begin to hear the fact that there is this distrust. And it's frankly endemic of the culture at large that we live in. Right. It's not just about the church. Yes. But you find a situation where people trust people locally, but they don't trust people outside the local area. And what I hear people talking about over and over and over again is they talk about those people, and they communicate an idea of lack of trust about what is going to happen at places beyond their own church. And you hear that over and over and over again. Mistrust, distrust seems to be an important part of this, leading to this uncertainty that Reggie was driving at. And their certainty is that they can mistrust the people that are there doing this.
I think you're right that that's not just the church.
Yeah.
Do you have any thought? Any of you have any thoughts on how the church combats that?
Well, my view is that the church, one of the critiques of the church by the unchurched is we're hypocrites, that we don't live out, we're acting as if we're Christians. And I would say part of the way we play that out, to answer that, is to be the living embodiment of Christ in the world. If Christ is the human face of God with flesh and bones, then we need to be the embodiment of Christ in the world and try to do that. And we need to set aside our own peculiarities, our own idiosyncrasies and things like that, and try to be Christ in the world. It's challenging, and Wesley would call that moving on to perfection. That's the goal for us, but how do we do that? How we model it and model it and model it, and when in doubt, model it some more.
Okay.
Well, it's also how we respond, generosity and love. So it's the way that we choose to receive. So we give trust. We want to receive trust. We want to be in an environment of trust. So that means we give trust. You don't demand trust. You give trust. And so we take personal responsibility for that. And it's how we give that generosity of love and how we deal with each other. The important part of the way we interact in the church and also with culture at large is in the way that we receive the offerings of others. So, and if we respond with an attitude of generosity to receiving the offerings of others. So if Reggie comes to me and asks me for information or brings a topic to me to discuss, then do I receive that with good intentions from Reggie, or do I question? Why did Reggie ask me that question? Where is he going with that? Or do I give out of my generosity of love for Reggie, that I know that he comes with good intentions and that Reggie is a person of God and that he is coming to serve God even in the way that we approach. So the way that we counteract that in the church is that we model that. We model that generosity and we give that trust and model that trust for others so that we then are the example to others in culture that we might bring them along as well.
Okay. Following that, I mean, we have to keep preaching and teaching about how important it is to give. And in that process, we have to give with joy, because we have the promise that if we give with joy, we'll be blessed. Once you put the offering in the plate and you raise that plate in after singing the doxology at church, you just ask God, help us to expand your kingdom, help us. And when it's consecrated, we just hoping and pray that we're good stewards so we can continue to preach to others about the good news. It's all about that. It's putting it as a spiritual discipline as well.
So I think you have sort of answered this question, but does anybody have anything to add about giving trends playing out at the local church, and what are people struggling with when it comes to giving? Anybody got anything to add on that?
There are probably several different responses to that question. So I'll try to give you a couple. Again, a lack of understanding in terms of exactly what it is that what's happening with these dollars. I think that in regard to stewardship education, that what the church is trying to get away from and probably needs to get away from is that just give your money to the church. I think there's all kind of studies out there right now that'll show you that people are still giving. They're just not always giving it to the church.
Right.
They're still giving. The church is not this one place where you should just give here. There's all kinds of wonderful things that people can contribute to. We've got to take the opportunity to let people know why it is a value and important to give to our ministries and to our mission and to those things that we do. We've got to make that a priority in their lives. And I think you will see people respond in a greater way, just like they're responding to other things that they contribute to.
And I think that's right. Well said, Reggie. I think also helping people understand how they can be a part of that ministry and how they're giving and giving them not just their money but their time. And people will give their money to things that they believe in and they participate in and they think are making a difference in the world.
Right.
And I think so. I agree completely with you. And I would just add to help not just their money but help get them involved in actually hands-on ministry. And people's money will follow what they're passionate about. And if you get them involved in ministry and helping people, the money will follow.
Yeah, it's time, talent, and treasure. And sometimes you get them involved in time and talent first, the treasure will follow.
Okay.
And also, if I heard that if we all give 10% in our local church, we don't have to do fundraising at all. And Dennis did a study that it would be awesome if you can share. And it was simple mathematics, but it helped us to understand that we can give more of what we are giving. You want to share that?
Well, what I did was I took a look at my local church in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I just took a look at where they were from zip codes. And then I looked at the median income for the families there. And then I summed that up, right? Proportionalized it, then summed it up. And I got that we were at about the 1.5% level of income. And so it gave me some measure of the distance I've got from where we might be to from where we are. I didn't try to. They call guilt the gift that give guilt to the gift that keeps on giving. I tried not to offer guilt, but I did try to show people where they were in relation to the society that we lived in there in Salt Lake.
And the importance is to give in proportion of what we give, because that shows our priorities.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's part of what we believe, you know. And it's extremely important. That's why I always remember Jesus when he was watching at the Pharisee versus that widow. She gave everything.
Right.
And it's the proportion, because that's how much you love God. That's how much you want to invest and give to the church, so we can continue and be a mission.